Now turn to Section 3. Section 3. You will hear two university students discussing a psychology research survey. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 25.
Hi, Daniel. Have you got a few minutes? We should sort out the psychology survey before our next research meeting.
Yes, definitely. We need to agree on the design before we start recruiting participants.
Our project is about how university students manage academic pressure, isn't it? We originally wanted to look at stress levels, study habits, and sleep.
And that's right. But after reading the literature, I think that's too broad. We'd collect too much information to analyse properly.
I had the same concern. I wondered whether we should focus on the relationship between study routines and students' perception of academic pressure.
That sounds more manageable. We could ask about how regularly they plan their study time and then ask them to rate how pressured they generally feel.
Would that mean we need a very large sample?
Not necessarily. Since this is a small undergraduate project, we don't need to claim the results represent every university student. We need enough responses to identify useful patterns.
That makes sense. What about using interviews instead of a questionnaire? We'd get much more detailed answers.
We would, but interviews would take considerably longer to conduct and transcribe. We only have 3 weeks for data collection and analysis.
True. A questionnaire is probably more realistic. I was also thinking of asking participants to keep a study diary, but that might be too demanding.
Yes, and it could affect participation. People who are already organised might be more willing to complete a diary, so we'd risk introducing a bias.
Good point. So, questionnaire only. Should most of the questions be open-ended?
I'd avoid that. Open questions can produce interesting comments, but they're difficult to compare systematically. We could use mostly rating scales with 2 or 3 open questions at the end.
When you say rating scales, do you mean asking students to choose from 1 to 5?
Exactly. For example, they could rate how often they plan their study sessions from never to very often. Then we could compare those responses with their reported sense of pressure.
Right. I was initially thinking of a scale from 1 to 10, but 5 points would probably be simpler and quicker for participant.
And it would make the questionnaire less tiring. We should also avoid wording that suggests one answer is better than another.
You mean questions like, how effective is your study routine?
Yes, that assumes the routine is effective. Something more neutral, such as, how would you describe your study routine, would be better.
I see. We should probably test the questionnaire before sending it out.
Definitely. A small pilot could show whether any questions are confusing or repetitive.
How many people should we ask for the pilot?
Perhaps 5 students from a different course. We don't want final participants to see the questions in advance.
That's sensible. And should we include students from different years in the main survey?
I think so, because first-year students may experience academic pressure differently from final-year students.
But then year of study becomes another variable. Like, would that make the analysis too complicated?
Not if we simply record it as background information. We don't have to make comparisons between every year group.
Okay, I was worried we'd have too many categories.
No, we can keep the background section short. Age range, year of study, and whether they're studying full or part-time.
Should we ask about previous academic results?
I'd leave that out. It could feel intrusive and it isn't essential to our main research question.
Agreed. We want people to answer honestly rather than worry about being judged.
Exactly. We also need an information sheet explaining that participation is voluntary and responses will be anonymous.
And we'll need consent before they begin.
Yes. The survey platform can include a consent statement on the first page so participants can confirm before continuing.
Good. I think we've got the design now. I'll draft the questionnaire and information sheet and you can prepare the pilot version.
That's fine. Once we've tested it, we can meet again and make any necessary changes before collecting data.
Great. Let's do that. I feel much happier with the questionnaire approach now.
Me too. It's focused enough to analyse, but still gives us useful detail about students' experiences.
Now you have some time to read questions 26 to 30 before you hear the rest of the conversation. Now listen carefully and answer the questions 26 to 30.
There's one more thing I'm not completely sure about. How should we recruit the participants? If we only ask people from our own department, we might end up with a very similar group.
That's true. We could advertise through the university's student portal instead. That would give students from several departments a chance to take part.
Wouldn't that make the sample less controlled?
It would be less uniform, but that's actually useful here. We're interested in general student experiences, so having different subject areas could make the findings more interesting.
I suppose you're right. We just need to record the participants' subject areas so we know what our sample looks like.
Exactly. And we should make it clear that completing the survey should take no more than 10 minutes.
10 minutes sounds reasonable. If it's much longer, people might abandon it halfway through.
We should also avoid collecting names or student numbers. That way, the responses remain anonymous from the start.
Agreed. What about the response deadline? If we launch the survey next Monday, could we keep it open for 1 week?
Yes, that gives us until the following Monday to close it and download the responses.
Then we can spend the second week analysing the data.
Right, I'll organise the responses and calculate the basic patterns. You could look through the open-ended answers and identify the main themes.
That's a good division of work. Then we can compare our findings rather than both doing exactly the same analysis.
And before we interpret anything, we should check how many people actually completed the whole questionnaire.
Yes, because incomplete responses could distort the results.
We should mention that limitation in the final report as well. Another limitation is that students who choose to participate may already be more interested in managing academic pressure.
So the results might not represent students who don't respond.
Exactly. We can acknowledge that without making the study sound unsuccessful.
I think our recommendation should be fairly cautious then. If we find a relationship between organised study routines and lower perceived pressure, we can say the pattern is worth investigating further.
Yes, but we shouldn't claim that planning causes lower stress. Our survey can identify an association, not establish cause and effect.
That's an important distinction. I'll make sure the wording reflects that in the report.
Great. So to summarise, we'll use a short questionnaire with mainly 5-point rating scales, plus a few open questions. We'll recruit through the student portal and keep the survey open for 1 week.
I'll prepare the first draft and information sheet by Friday. You'll create the pilot version and we'll test it with 5 students next week.
Then we'll revise the questionnaire before launching it on Monday.
Perfect. And we'll meet the following Tuesday to review the initial responses and decide whether anything needs attention.
Sounds like a plan. I think we've turned a rather broad idea into a manageable study.
Yes, and the research question is much clearer now. Thanks, Daniel.
You're welcome. I'll send you my pilot draft tomorrow.
That is the end of Section 3. You now have half a minute to check your answers.